almost summer, basically like summer. Yeah,
That's summer.
not
Oh yeah,
yeah, summer. Yeah.
that is
But
summer.
it's not like there's a part of summer in New York that's miserable, so it's not like
Yes. I have been to New York in July, and
that.
that is miserable.
Right,
All right. Welcome, everybody. I think we are live on YouTube now, and we are recording for you. And I am so thrilled to be speaking with my good friend and pianist Reed Tetzloff, who joins us from the greatest city in the world. Where are you joining us from today?
Thank you, Jen. I'm in New York City.
New York City. What a special place. So many musical places there and inspiration on every corner. A great place to be. I just want to acknowledge that this interview is taking place on the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam people who have been here since time has been recorded and have had music here since we can remember. So we are grateful to be guests here on this land. I want to thank our sponsors for this microphone. Thank you to Tom Lee Music, and thank you to 2X Education for sponsoring our podcast this season. So Reed, have you been managing to get some practice in during this crazy time?
Yeah, I've been practicing. Yeah. That's been okay. It's kind of for a while it was the only thing there was to do. So yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. And what's on the top of your pile of scores right now?
Well, I just actually recorded, for our concert, and I played Beethoven, Opus 101, the Schubert F minor Impromptu, Opus 142, number one, and Schumann Carnival. So those
That's
are
wonderful.
the three at the top. Yes.
So that's a pretty neat transition into my second question, actually. Why don't you tell us about how you chose this program that we're going to hear this Saturday,
Sure.
October 3rd, at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Tickets are available on a pay what you can pyramid basis.
Yep.
So, again, that's this Saturday, October 3rd. How did you choose that program?
How did I choose this exact program? Well, this music is actually sort of a snapshot of a small period of music history, and in some recitals, I like to have a wider range where I play something from the 18th century and the 20th. Almost summer, basically like summer. Now I'm hearing myself through my. Oh, okay.
Oh,
It's okay. It stopped.
good.
It was just weird for a second. But yeah, with this one, this music was composed between about 1816 and 1835. So it's a relatively um, small snapshot of music history, but very very contrasting pieces. And to think that from when Beethoven started to write sort of his late pieces, of which Opus 101 could be considered one of the first, as he was transitioning into his final style of composing. To think that in 20 years you got from there to these these character pieces of Schumann, it's amazing actually.
Mhm.
So I enjoyed that, and Carnival was just a piece I always wanted to learn, and I actually learned it during the time I was quarantined, as we all were. But that was one of my projects during the spring. So
How did you choose Carnival as your quarantine project?
well, I made many projects, but I've always loved Schumann, and haven't played enough of him. And
Mhm.
it's funny because as a kid, I really did not like Schumann. I didn't understand the music. I thought it was, kind of insane, and I suppose it is, but in a way that you love. So I worked on Chrysleriana and Carnival and other things, but Carnival got felt like mine from some of the first times I played through it. Uh, so yeah.
Carnival is a wonderful piece, and he goes through so many different characters that visit the evening soiree.
Yes. Yeah.
And I have to say, I think my favorite character might be Chopin.
Oh yeah. No, that's a great story because Chopin hated that movement. He thought it was an insult.
Oh,
I
homage!
don't
Oh,
compose like that. But
does
it's
it
funny.
sound like this?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean he marked it agitato, which is very strange. Nobody plays it that way. They play it like a nocturne, right? But it's this very Schumann-esque, it's Chopin, but it's really Schumann. Um,
Oh, that's too bad Chopin was too sensitive about that
yeah,
because for me, I think that movement is awesome.
I know, I do too. It's great. Yeah, yeah,
So your concert is going to be such a cool opportunity to play for our audience and people that have been following your career throughout the United States and Europe. You've played in Belgium a lot,
yeah.
and so for our people here that haven't met you and got to know you, what should they know about you outside of music? Any favorite sports, favorite books, favorite physical activities or hobbies?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. I'll go backwards with those questions. So, during I've lived in New York for almost 10 years, but during the last 6 months, I've spent a lot of time out of New York and, rediscovering nature. And I have to say, my favorite recent activity, I've always loved kayaking, but I recently began paddle boarding, and I could do that all day, just standing on the board, out on the water. I love that. So I've been doing so I love getting into nature, especially now. Yeah, and anyway, outside of music, literature is my main love, actually. And I think if I couldn't be a musician, I would do something literary. Yeah, so I love that.
What are you reading right now?
What am I reading right now? Actually, right now I'm reading I'm deep into research on in some musical books because I'm preparing for a big on Beethoven and Ives, actually. So I've been reading their biographies and their letters and everything.
Mm.
But yeah, I recently read this great novel by a Southern American writer, Donna Tartt, called *The Secret History*, which is about a group of college students in rural Vermont, and it's this very dark story, actually, because they begin by it's a group of students studying Greek and studying the classics, and they have this mentor who's you know he lives in this very elevated world. And anyway, they slowly go from reading Plato and Aristotle in Greek to committing murder, and it is
Oh,
presented in such a way that it's inevitable, and that you see how the study of the classics led them to that conclusion, and it's very unsettling.
that escalated quickly.
No, it did. It escalates slowly in the book. Yeah,
And then it gets really bad.
it's bad. That's what I read most recently.
Wow.
Excuse me, but yeah, my favorite novel of all time would have to be Bleak House by Charles Dickens.
The
Big,
wonderful, wonderful author to choose.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
Yeah.
Um, I need to finish Oliver Twist.
Oh yeah, you get on.
Yeah, I should get on that for real. And what a command of the English language.
Oh gosh, it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think in North America we don't know half of those words, or we know them but we don't use them.
Right, right. We read them as like, oh, that's what they say over there.
No, that's actually in English language.
Right, right.
Um, so, original question here. We've gone through that one.
Yeah.
What sources of inspiration do you have that inform your performances? And maybe that's changed as a pandemic, and you've been out on the water.
Right, right. Sure.
Paddling.
Yeah, that certainly can. I mean, in general, I think that the world of each composer is, the world that we have to get into. So, my inspiration when I play Mozart, comes from a different place than when I play Schumann or when I play Debussy or when I play Ives. Um, yeah. So, I mean, like with Carnival, actually, since we were just talking about that, I was just thinking about this because it's interesting because it's a masquerade ball, and by the way, isn't that fitting for COVID? We go to a big gathering all wearing masks.
I don't know about you, but I have a concert black mask.
Yeah, yeah, okay, right. Yeah, concert black. That's great. But the world of those balls, that took place in, say, the 1830s. You're in the 1830s. You're in Paris, and you go to one of these masked balls, and there's all this intrigue and these affairs going on behind the surface, but
Yes.
it's presented with such it's in this mode of such unbelievable elegance that we've kind of lost today, because yeah, I mean, people are having affairs with with each other, but the glance across the room, or a movement of the hand would convey unbearable intimacy in
Hmm.
those times. So we've gotten away from that, but that's the world of that piece. And so it's passionate, it's beautiful, but it has this, it can't be played in this sort of aggressive hormonal way. It's very, it has to be very beautiful. That's a challenge in that piece.
Subtlety, and I
Yeah,
think our culture has lost a lot of that.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
I, Hearing stories of um, how our world parallels those activities today, yeah,
yeah,
it has lost that subtlety and that gentileness,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
think that we hear that in the music for
Right,
sure,
right.
for
So
sure.
yeah, so that's a long way around your question, I guess. But just putting myself in the world of the music or the composer, where and I can try to become a part of that world in some way, participate in
So is this why it's very important for students? I
it.
hope you're all listening, Kitsilano Piano Studio students.
Oh, piano studio.
Yeah. Louder for the people in the back. Is this why it's important to know the historical context of the pieces we're playing?
Absolutely, yeah. That's. I mean, you can't really get to the center of what you're playing without that. So yeah, absolutely. Listen to other works of the composers you're playing, and not only the piano works. If you're playing a Beethoven sonata, you need to hear the Beethoven symphonies, right, and the string quartets. Um, yeah, that's one of the most important things about our work, I think.
That's right. So speaking of people being in student stage or developing musicians,
Yeah.
um, you are now a consummate professional. You're concertizing. You've got some recordings out. At one stage, you were a student as well. And so, what would you tell a young person who's between like 12 and 19? They're preparing for a big audition for conservatory, or they're preparing for competition. What would you tell them?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I would tell them to sort of keep a sort of a big picture view of things. When you're that age, say you're 15 and you're really serious about piano, and you enter a lot of competitions, and you probably play the same pieces for a year, right? And maybe you win these competitions, which is great, and you get a benefit from that. But I did that, and then I later wished that I had spent that time learning more repertoire. And
Right.
because I don't know, life is long, and you want to be building skills that you will apply in your career. Of course, performing in competitions and auditions is a very valuable skill, as long as you can do it without losing um, your own truth. Being true to yourself and how you want to play. That you don't adjust your playing to what you think will give you a good result, right?
Hmm. So, do you think it's possible to keep your artistic authenticity and still go through these competitions? Because a lot of criticism of these competitions is that they're looking for the warhorse pieces, they're looking for the fastest, most brilliant passage work.
Yeah.
Can you still keep your integrity?
Well, I think you can. I mean, I think everyone's different. Some people probably maybe even do their best in that setting. Some people need to kind of find a path unique to themselves. I did a lot of competitions, and now I have not done competitions for several years, but so I kind of know it from both sides, I guess. There are definitely certain pieces, speaking of repertoire, that I want to play and I want to play in concert, but I would never play in a competition because, and I've done that. I've played pieces like this in competitions, and the jury told me, "Why did you choose this? We don't even know this piece. We can't judge you on it."
What an odd
So,
comment to make, right?
no, but I don't know. I mean, they're looking for reasons to eliminate you. So if they've never heard a piece by Charles Griffiths, it's I'm sorry, for them, but it's a good reason to eliminate me, right? But yeah, but that's another story. But yeah, so repertoire, and also the way that one plays in a competition. I might want to play a certain way, but if I was in a competition, I would put a lid on that because I know it's not going to go across well. So anyway, in concert, I have I feel the freedom that you
For
know
sure.
that I want. Yeah. So.
Speaking of that composer, tell us about your first album,
Oh
Sounds
yeah.
of Transcendence, and who you chose to include, and tell us more about the repertoire we can hear on that album.
Okay. Yeah. So that was released in 2017. I played music by Charles Griffiths, who I just mentioned, an American composer from the early 20th century, and Alexander Scriabin and Cesar Franck. And Scriabin and Griffiths were, in a way, their counterparts. Griffiths was called an American Scriabin. He was nicknamed that. And their music is similar in some ways. Yeah, I mean, basically, these three composers, I had the idea that their music expressed something that was outside of the typical sort of romantic spirit of human emotion and love and loss and passion, and they were dealing with a sort of objective reality, whether for Frank it's his devout Catholicism, and for Scriabin it's this sort of narcissistic mysticism where he was God. And for Griffiths, it's a little different. He was inspired by Oriental things. Like one of the pieces I played was the Pleasure Dome of Kubla Khan, um,
Wow.
which that's the greatest title in music history, by the way.
Has to be.
I'm going to play a piano piece. It's called the Pleasure Dome of Kubla Khan. Sounds,
I don't even know where that would be,
oh,
but
it sounds sketchy, right?
it does
Yeah.
slightly, but also interesting. And
Also interesting. Well, it's the title of a poem by Coleridge, and oh, he didn't. It's not an original title, but it's a tone poem based on this poem by Coleridge. So
okay,
yeah.
that's
Anyway,
cool.
so yeah, so that was the idea of transcendence, this sort of spiritual objectivity in the music, and the pieces are contrasting in their way, but there is sort of that theme. So,
So we've kind of talked a little bit about competitions and preparation for that procedure and what you can include in a recital when you have kind of more agency to choose your own adventure. For you, how is it different, the process of recording versus a live recital with an audience? Are those two processes different or do you treat them the same?
well, they're different. I mean, inevitably, but yeah, I mean, when I am recording, I want to preserve as much of a live performance as possible. So, if I'm making a commercial, when I made my commercial recording, of course there's editing, but I try to take as many large takes as possible so that, I have a sense of, playing a full section or playing a full movement, right? Yeah, and I don't know, with recording, I mean, it's nice because you have more than one chance. You can take as many risks as you want. I try to do that in performance also, but
You do, and it goes well.
no, but yeah, I guess I'm trying to say that in the end, I want the recording to sound like it's a performance. I'm not a fan of overly coiffed sort of studio aesthetic, but you know
I was just speaking with someone who I think we both mutually know, Mark Ainley.
yeah, I was watching a bit of that on Facebook earlier.
Ah, I'm glad you caught some of our conversation.
I did. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, he's fantastic.
And when you actually come to Vancouver, because we do fully intend for you to come here
Thank
in real life,
you.
um, once the world
Yeah,
settles, I don't know how else to say it anymore. It's
I know.
such a bloody mess.
I know.
Um, it's quite the world we live in. But when the world calms down, we'll definitely have you here. But Mark and I were talking about how um, we feel like new recordings are wiped with Lysol.
Yeah, yeah.
They're too clean, and the issue of perfectionism is very persistent.
Right, right,
Uh,
right.
and so I'm very fascinated you brought that up too because
Yeah,
I think
yeah. I think there's. I don't know. It maybe also applies to what we were saying about competitions. There may be a desire to sort of see a performance or music in general, to sort of see it as, okay, you have a blank, you have a, you have, you got 100 points, and every time you mess up, you're taking off 1 point. So it's like you're looking for mistakes, rather than you have a blank slate and you're going to paint on it, and the audience can focus on all of the great things that one is doing, rather than the performer being concerned about trying to avoid as many mistakes as possible, right?
I agree, and that seems to be what some competitions are going for, and it seems to be what the big controversies with the results always end up
Oh,
being.
yeah, well, that's
We
just
won't go there, but it just seems to be like that. And part of our mission here at Muse West is just sort of like present people with the most authentic performance that they're going to have a great evening or afternoon watching from, I guess now, from the comfort of home.
yeah,
I never thought I would say those words, but here we are.
yeah, I know, it's very true. Yeah.
Um, so, if anybody's just joining us either on audio or on Facebook, we are joined by wonderful American pianist Reed Tetzloff, who is originally from Minnesota, now is splitting time between Massachusetts and New York on the East Coast. Um, and that brings me to my next question. New York is just such a fabulous place to be for anyone of any artistic um, persuasion. So I'm wondering, what about New York makes it special?
Wow. Well, I mean, so many things. I mean, of course, you can see any great artist you want any night, until 2020. But that we'll get back to that. But so there's that, and definitely, I mean, I have to admit that when I was like a freshman in college, it would be like, oh, the New York Phil's playing Mahler Six tonight, and then the next day, somebody, oh, do you want to have tickets to hear the Vienna Philharmonic at Carnegie Hall? Okay, yeah. Oh, the Met Opera's doing, Tosca. Um, oh, there's a recital by this guy. It's just like it could be every night. You could just never practice. But yeah, but I mean, I ended up practicing. It's okay. But
How did you have the discipline to say no to some of these performances and say, I have to practice for my own stuff?
well,
Because I know 100% if this person was in New York, she wouldn't be doing anything after work. She'd be at all the concerts.
well, and part of it was being a poor college student, but yeah. No, I don't know. But I had a wonderful community around me of musicians at Manus College. We had this little campus on the Upper West Side, 300 students or total. And it was just a magical experience because, the school was this small school where we were, getting the best education in harmony and theory and Schenkerian analysis and private lessons, of course. And then, apart from that sort of cloistered life, then the whole city was actually our campus. So it was just a really wonderful feeling, and I can't imagine myself without being a New Yorker, really, at this point.
And there's a lot of other inspirational places there that one can visit: the Morgan Library,
Yeah. Met Museum. Yeah.
the Met Museum, the MoMA,
Yeah.
Guggenheim,
Yeah.
the Frick Collection. The list goes on.
I know. Yeah.
So, another question for you about music education. This is something we really focus on here. If you could take a lesson with any pianist who has left the earth, they're not with us anymore, who would you like to take a lesson with and why?
Oh man. That's really difficult because I want to say Chopin or some composer so that they could give me the secret, but when I actually heard what you were talking with Mark, he brought up the idea of what if we heard Chopin play and we might not like it.
What if they don't give us a secret?
Or what if there is no secret? But actually, oh gosh, I'm going totally off track now. I remember Richard Good, who taught at Manus, actually, and I played for him several times. He was really an inspiration to me. But he said, once talking about all of the sort of stylistic issues in playing Mozart, he said, now, what if one day, somehow magically we heard a recording of Mozart playing? Would we all just go home and try to copy that, and then we'd never debate this anymore? No, of course not. We would keep, keep trying to get better and better, and find our own answers. Okay, so who would I have a lesson with? I don't know. I mean, Alfred Cortot comes to mind. I adore him. The way he shapes phrases is sometimes just blows my imagination.
And he's only one step away from Chopin, so you can
Right.
get your secret answers.
Yeah. So yeah, he's the name that's sticking in my mind at the moment. But.
That's a wonderful, wonderful choice. We like to have a rapid fire round of questions, but before we do that, one more serious question. It is so clear that the world is in some sort of social turmoil right now. All over the news, we see all these problematic things that are happening, and to say it's a time of uncertainty would probably be the understatement of the year. But we'll stick with it because part of our job is to preserve hope through music. But through all of these things happening around us, how do you see that music can build a bridge between communities that are hurting or people who have suffered loss in the pandemic? How does music act as a glue? How can it heal us?
Yeah, I mean, I know what it's done in my life, and where I would be without it. Where I would be emotionally, psychologically, just as a human. And I don't know. I mean, the message of this music that we play is universal, and someone from I don't know, someone who's never heard a piece of classical music can be unbearably moved by Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and they sense that this music represents human freedom and brotherhood and love and all that. So gosh, I don't really have a one sentence answer to that question, but
No.
yeah, but I mean the basically this music has a universal message. It's not something that's confined to 19th century Europe. Recently, there's been actually some debate about whether that's true, and it's of course ridiculous. But as you see by people across the globe who can be who hear this music and hear what it is. But yeah, I mean, and it's a universal language, of course. Anyone can just hear it, and you don't have to be able to read music to understand it. It sounds the same to anyone's ears, really. So
That's right.
It's one of the rare things that can connect.
There is sort of a unifying element for sure.
Yeah.
So 2 rapid fire fun questions. What's your favorite meal after a concert?
Oh man, I don't know, a good steak.
Good steak. Yes, protein after playing. And finally, if you had to take 2 or 3 recordings to a desert island,
Yes.
You've been out paddleboarding, and heaven forbid, you're on a deserted island, you paddleboarded way too far,
Yeah.
and luckily you've got 2 or 3 recordings with you. What do you have with you?
Do I have a fire? Gosh, okay, let me think. 2 or 3 recordings. Gosh, I am very inspired by opera and vocal music. So one would be opera, probably. And it may very well be Tosca with Maria Callas and Tito Gobbi.
What a wonderful recording.
Probably have to. Okay, there's one. Since we're talking about Cortot, I'll go with Alfred Cortot's Chopin Preludes.
Oh yeah, that kind of has to go with you on the island, I think, too.
And gosh, the third one. Great question. I want to go vocal again. I want to go with Elizabeth Schwarzkopf singing maybe Schumann songs, or perhaps Richard Strauss, the 4 last songs in the songs for.
That's a great choice too.
So we got one recording, opera, and songs. Yeah.
If you're going to be on that island, you might need the 4 last songs.
Yeah, I know. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
goodness.
Paddleboard back. No.
Paddleboard back, yes, with a volleyball, just like Tom Hanks. Um, Reed, it has been so wonderful to catch up with you and see that you're doing well during this time. And we are so looking forward to the stunning program that you recently recorded in New York for us. And that will be premiering and available for folks who purchase their ticket on October 3rd. There are different ways to donate. We also have PayPal if you wish. And that concert will be again at 6 o'clock Pacific on Saturday, 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you are in another time zone of the world, I think that's going to be about 9 in the morning in Japan and Hong Kong on Sunday. And for friends in Europe, we are sorry. It will be like 4 in the morning. So we can't please you all. So it has been great to catch up. And thanks so much, Reed. It was fabulous. And again, we want to thank our sponsors for this wonderful microphone, Tom Lee Music, 2X Education, and the Weingartner Phonogram Company. And our next concert, again with Reed, is Saturday, October 3rd. This is Jennifer West with Muse West Concerts telling you to take note. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.